It's good to speak clear in any situation, but when you are giving a public presentation, you should feel extra pressure to make your words as clear as possible. The burden is on you to identify ahead of time where certain phrases might be ambiguous, which means if you say them in a certain way, it could enter the listener's ears and give them a meaning that you didn't intend. So let's take a look at a few sentences that I found that could have different meanings just depending on the way that you use your intonation. I'm going to show you a sentence kind of like this. I'm going to ask you to think about it for a few seconds, maybe say it out loud if that helps you, and see if you can find the two different meanings that this phrase can have, just by changing your intonation. So from here on, I will just put this slide up for a second, and if you want to practice that, please push pause, and then I'll be continuing on. The phrase that probably people mean by this, I'll put on first. I think you would want to say, they fed her dog meat. Okay, so I'm trying to indicate here that there's a rising intonation on the key words and a falling intonation to sort of show that you're finished talking, or to perhaps show that the rising intonation word and the falling intonation word are not directly connected. And with something like this, if it's just a conversation and your conversation partner has the chance to follow up a question with you, well, we don't really need to worry that much. They probably know what you mean. But in a public presentation, you don't have that chance for people to follow up. It's really important that they definitely know what you mean the first time. So put extra pauses in your talk. So if I was just talking to a friend, again, I'd say, they fed her dog meat. Fine. We can understand from the context. But in a public presentation, I'd probably pause more. They fed her dog meat. A little bit of a pause between those two. So some people gave meat to her dog. I will also give you an alternative sentence that might be better just because it's a little clearer. They fed her dog some meat. The alternative meaning could be a little darker. They fed her dog meat. Okay, so dog is now an adjective that modifies meat rather than a standalone noun. So dog meat, they both have equal intonation. So that means some people gave her cuisine made of dog meat. Or if you want to be more clear, you could say they fed her a dog meat dish. Okay, next challenge is very similar. Okay, I'm going to go on. We saw the lamb meet for dinner. Means some juvenile sheep gathered to graze. So again, like the previous one, lamb here is a noun. And it just because we might predict people associate the word meat with lamb as in food, it's the duty of the speaker to pause. We saw the lamb meet for dinner. To be a bit clearer, we saw the lamb meet in the field for dinner. Other meaning could be, we saw the lamb meat for dinner. The lamb meat. At dinner there was a dish made of lamb. Could be clearer by saying, we saw the lamb meat on the menu for dinner. Next one. Okay, continuing. We gave the library books. Okay, we brought books to give to the library. Lots of donations. Again, let's just add some. Some is perfectly fine in a public presentation, even if it's scientific. You might not use the word in written language for a paper, but a presentation is different from written language. So don't be afraid to use some casual words here and there. It actually improves the message sometimes. Because this could mean, we gave the library books. library books. Again, similar thing from before. Library is an adjective. So library books is a set, like as if it's almost one word. And maybe on this one we would even stress we, because maybe there's some books on the table with other things, and oh, who gave these library books? We did. We are the ones who gave the library books. It's a little bit of a strange sentence, but I think you get the idea. Okay, first meaning is she cannot bear children. She cannot bear children. So pretty typical for this type of structure. The emphasis goes on not. That's pretty common. So she cannot carry a child. Maybe that's why she's at the fertility clinic. So cannot or couldn't, those words can be ambiguous. So there's times when it's better to say she isn't able to bear children. Something like that. Alternative meaning, she cannot bear children. Okay, she really doesn't like them. So in this case, you might separate bear and children because you predict that the audience thinks bear, bear, bore, born, and children, that sort of goes as a set. But in this case, bear has a meaning that the audience might not expect, so it's your duty to separate those two words. She cannot bear children. She cannot bear being around children. This one's more subtle. This one's kind of hard. So in the first case, I'm saying, Darwin agrees with me more than Mendel. Okay, so my thought resembles Darwin's more than it resembles Mendel's. Maybe the addition of does here does a lot of work. So Darwin agrees with me more than Mendel does. Mendel does. Darwin agrees with me more than Mendel does. A little bit strange because these guys are dead. I should probably choose living people to make this more clear. I just wanted to choose famous people. If we said it this way, Darwin agrees with me more than Mendel. So, again, a little strange because he's dead. I should have used living people here. But Darwin's thought is closer to mine than it is to Mendel's. Or, probably best way, Darwin agrees with me more than he does with Mendel. So, don't be afraid to add a few words in case something might be ambiguous. These hyphenated clauses come up a lot with academic literature. You have to change the way you talk if there's a hyphen. We observed the disease-induced cattle specifically. Disease-induced cattle. That's almost like one, unit. We observed the disease-induced cattle specifically. So make sure specifically is somewhat separated. So we followed the effects of the disease which we gave to the cattle. Disease-induced cattle. That's something that we did to them. Now, I think this is an awkward phrase because of the way specifically is here. You probably should not actually say this. What may be better is, in particular, we observed the disease-induced cattle. So if you already have a tough phrase like disease-induced cattle, let's avoid putting an adverb right after it. It just gives the audience more pressure to understand you. Let's move the adverb to the front of the sentence. You might say something like this, though. We observed the disease-induced cattle specifically. Okay, again, not really the greatest sentence, but you could imagine someone saying this. We observed the disease-induced cattle specifically. So that means we could see that the disease had a particular effect on cattle, but not on other animals. So yeah, let's add that here. This relative pronoun does a lot of work here. We observed that the disease-induced, let me do that again. We observed that the disease-induced cattle specifically. So there's another issue here. Probably we should not put the adverb here. We should probably say something more like, we observed that the disease specifically induced cattle. And that's just better to keep induced away from disease if you're going to use it this way, because the audience expects disease-induced cattle, infection, how can I say, disease-infected cattle or something like that. More of an everyday one here. This might be new to you. Would you like tea or coffee? So you may drink tea or coffee, but nothing else. So more clear, would you like tea or would you like coffee? Tea or coffee? We go down with the intonation to show that the choices are finished and I'm done. Like, don't try to expand what I've told you. The intonation closes it. But we could do it the other way, where the intonation is not closed. Would you like tea or coffee? So you may drink tea, coffee, or what else we have you're free to go at it. So would you like tea, coffee, or something else? I think Americans, I know I do it a lot, we just say or, and we don't say something else. So would you like tea, coffee, or... I've been told that I do that a lot. Let me give you one final one that's kind of just funny to me. Have you ever seen this one before? So the key for this is, how many people are we talking about? Just think about it. In this sentence, the way you read it the first time, how many role models are in my life? It could be 4, but it also could be 2, right? It's possible to read it that you're only talking about 2 people. The role models in my life are my parents, Marie Curie and Albert Einstein. Okay? Strange way to talk. Make sure your intonation goes the right way and the speed goes the right way. The role models in my life are my parents, Marie Curie, and Albert Einstein. So make sure there's no gap between my parents, Marie Curie. Or people will think that you're trying to say your parents are Marie Curie and Albert Einstein. Okay, so that's it for this short intonation practice. You might want to go back and try to repeat the phrases that I said, and just think about how you are responsible for the way that your sounds enter your audience's ears.